How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So this is going to be a Q&A follow-up of my OSCP study guide video I put out last week. There has been a lot of interest in that video. Definitely the most popular video I've had on this channel so far. So thank you guys for tuning in and welcome to the channel if you are new. The OSCP content that I've been putting out on this channel has been pretty popular, and you know, when I was going through the OSCP journey myself, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, I read blog posts, I went on Reddit, went on the Discord, sort of just trying to consume all the information that I could on the OSCP to try and give myself a leg up on the exam. And definitely that process helped me pick up a lot of tips and tricks along the way, and I hope that my videos have done the same for you. So for this video, I'm pretty much just gonna scroll through the comment section and go through the questions. I've probably already answered most of these questions already in the actual comments itself, but I sort of wanted to gather all the questions in one video and put it out in a video format in case you don't want to scroll through the comment section in a bunch of my videos. And I'll put timestamps in the video description down below as well if you want to jump around and just watch the bits that interest you or is relevant to your situation. So the first question is, hello, where can I get a voucher for the OSCP certification? And actually, this is probably a good time to ask that question because TryHackMe actually has an event going on in December called the Event of Cyber. I did the event last year in 2020, and I actually got 2 TryHackMe vouchers out of that as well, which helped me along my prep. This year, they're actually giving away 5 OSCP vouchers, which includes 30 days of PWK material and 1 exam attempt. The Event of Cyber on TryHackMe last year was really cool. It's really tailored towards the beginner. They walk you through some really basic hacking methodology and some blue teaming stuff as well in there. So catered towards the beginner, you can win some TryHackMe vouchers along the OSCP exam voucher. So check that out if you're new to TryHackMe. Probably a really good walkthrough of the TryHackMe platform as well. The exercises are really beginner friendly, and they've got accompanying videos to walk you through the exercises even if you're stuck. And I might actually make some videos on that event as we get into December, just to sort of walk you guys through that if you want to dip your toes into the platform. Really good way to get introduced to it. Next question, can we make use of API tokens in the exam? For example, the WP scan token. I guess this is a bit of a segue into the tools that you're allowed to use in the OSCP exam, because I didn't really cover that topic much in my previous video. So to answer the question, yes, you can use the WP Scan API, but just make sure that it's the free version of the API, because you cannot use paid or commercial tools on the exam. So for example, you cannot use Burp Suite Professional, but you can use the free Burp Suite version. You can use the OWASP Zap because that's completely free. You cannot use automated tools such as SQL Map and all the various other tools that sort of mirror the functionality of the SQL map. So automated exploit tools or commercial or paid tools, and also Nessus as well. You can't use that on the exam because it's a commercial paid tool. Now, some tools kind of blur the line a little bit, such as a Drupal Geddon, which kind of auto exploits and detects the version of Drupal for you. So I'm not sure about tools like that. If you want to play on the safe side, probably avoid them. This is sort of my interpretation of the guidance on the tools that Offensive Security allows you to use. You can check out their website for more information, but they don't have really detailed information that lists out the tools that you can use and the tools that you can't use. More of it's a general guideline of what they expect you to do. And also, I'll just mention there was an incident of someone getting pinged for using LinPeas before, because LinPeas actually put in an update where it did do an auto exploit as part of running through the LinPeas check process. That has actually been dealt with separately by Offensive Security. They actually passed the student in that instance, and they put out a blog post explaining why they did that. So I also put a link to this in the description below if you want to read up on that. In short, if you use the latest version of Limpy's, you can use that in the exam. There's no auto exploit in that anymore. They took it out in the latest update. Okay, the next question. Do you need to study programming before attempting this certification? So in terms of programming, you'll need very basic programming, not very advanced. You can sort of just do a programming tutorial and then you can slowly start to work from there. You only need to know the basics in terms of editing and understanding exploit code. Now, if you actually look at the exploit code that you often find in places such as ExploitDB, they're mostly written in Python, and when it comes to editing those exploits, you don't actually need to edit too much of those exploits to get it working. You kind of just need to read it and understand what it's doing and change some tiny parts of the code, such as the URL it's pointing to. Maybe you have to put a password in one of the variables, figure out what types of parameters that the scripts actually need to run properly. So pretty basic stuff. You're not going to really be expected to do exploit development, writing up a whole POC or exploit code by yourself. So the programming experience and knowledge isn't really that high. You can kind of just get the basics, such as what is a variable, what are methods, etc., and then sort of just pick things up as long as you go. You'll get to read a lot of exploit code as you look through ExploitDB and GitHub and that kind of thing. I wouldn't worry about too much programming experience, but definitely do a couple of tutorials, understand like the basics, and then I guess you should be okay to slowly pick things up. So the next question, a video on managing job and OSCP prep will surely be helpful. So I've sort of hinted at this in the past that previously I worked in IT, but not in cybersecurity and not as a pen tester. So during that time, I didn't really have any issues with burnout and handling a job because I was pretty much very motivated to start hacking, going in there on TryHackMe, Hack the Box after work and just smashing away at machines. I didn't really feel any burnout at that time because it was all very novel. It was exciting to get in there and after work or something different. So for a full-time job, for me, myself, I didn't really have any issues at that time. After when I got into the pen testing role, I found it a little bit harder to keep up the same motivation and put in the same hours after work as I did back then when I worked in general IT. I think because one factor is you're sort of doing the same thing during work, and after work you kind of want to give yourself a break and not to do the exact same things again after work. So in that case, you kind of need to find a balance, find a hobby, and also make sure you take breaks during your prep. Like during my prep, I probably sometimes took a week off, a couple of days off here and there. So if you're going to get burnt out in the whole process, then you're going to stop and not do any more study. So that's not going to do anyone any favors. So I suggest just sort of take a break as you feel the burnout coming in. The next question is, how is the setup for the proctoring? How many webcams do you need? And sharing your screens and so on. So the setup on the proctoring I covered in my previous video, what to expect on exam day. Essentially, you are going to share all your screens with the proctor. The webcam is going to be turned on the whole time. However, they cannot hear your microphone, so that's not going to be on. You can take a break anytime you wish, type in the chat you want to take a break, and then you can step away from your keyboard and then do whatever you want. And when you come back, you just type in your back and then you can resume your exam. It's pretty non-intrusive process for the proctoring. I didn't really have any issues apart from that second exam attempt where there was technical issues at the start. But I used Chrome, the Janus WebTRC plugin, and that didn't really have any crash issues during the proctoring. So I would suggest going with Chrome and the web plugin if you want to avoid any proctoring issues. The next question is it possible to get an entry-level job with the OSCP without a degree? I definitely think that's possible. For myself, I actually got a computer science degree a long time ago, almost 10 years ago now, and I actually worked in a different industry for a long time before deciding to pivot my career back into IT. So you can kind of call that degree a wash for me at that point. I got various certifications, I jumped back into IT, and then I landed a pen testing position. Nowadays in cybersecurity, I don't think they are focusing that much on degrees anymore. As long as you have the hands-on practical knowledge, you should be good to go. And the OSCP, as I mentioned in my previous video, it's a very practical certification. So if you have that, you can essentially prove that you do have the practical skills for the job. So you should be good to go if you have the OSCP certification. You're going to get interviews for sure, as I mentioned. So get the certification, kind of work on your interview skills so you can actually demonstrate in the interview that you do have the knowledge. Then I think you should be good to go. So my answer to that question is yes, you can get into cybersecurity without a degree. The next question is, I'm going to be going for the OSCP in December. Can you please share your notes? That would be a lot of help for me. Like I mentioned in my video previously, I don't think sharing my notes is going to help you that much because the notes are not going to really make sense to you. And organizing and building up your methodology and notes at the same time is going to be the best way to learn anyway. So I don't think that's going to be something that I will be doing, but if you do want some OSCP notes, you can essentially just search on Google OSCP cheat sheets, and on the first page there will be a ton of notes made by other people who have passed the exam. If you are looking into learning new tools, I think that would be helpful for someone who is fairly new into this process. But if you're pretty much a long way into your prep already, I think most of the tools you should have encountered before. So it's not going to be too much of a help. If you want more of a cheat sheet that you can refer to just to check off the boxes to make sure you've covered all the bases, a good website I would recommend is a book.hacktricks.xyz. I still refer to that website now when I'm on pen tests. Look into that website. I think that's probably the best and most comprehensive cheat sheet that you'll find on the internet. The next question is, while doing machines, do you always manually exploit it or do you find it easier to use automated tools? So in the beginning during your prep, you're definitely going to find it easier using automated tools, especially when you're learning something like Metasploit. It just feels so easy. You kind of just hit run and then the whole thing just magically gets you a shell. But as you progress, I think that's also a good part of the OSCP exam is you cannot use Metasploit on more than one machine. So that artificial restriction actually forces you to learn to read code and do manual exploitation. And that process just really makes you understand what's going on under the hood and helps you progress a bit more in your skill set. If you Google OSCP walkthroughs on various boxes, there are always people who have OSCP without Metasploit in the title. So the artificial limitation that they put on the exam, some people hate it because it's not realistic. And another way to think about it is that that restriction actually forces a lot of people to learn code and learn the manual exploitation process, which really ups the knowledge of someone who wants to pass the OSCP exam. So that factor is good, and you definitely should learn the manual exploitation methods. That will get easier as you do more of it. And since you can't use auto exploit tools on the exam and you're limited to one Metasploit machine on the exam, yeah, it's definitely good to know and understand manual exploitation. The next question is, hey Andy, I'm changing career. I don't know anything about cybersecurity and I want to end up with my OSCP. Where is the best place to start? So like I mentioned before, I actually transitioned my career into IT as well. Definitely TryHackMe is a good place to start. TryHackMe is sort of the platform that got me into this whole pen testing path in the first place. If it wasn't for that platform and its easy to digest modules, the learning curve into pen testing would be a lot harder, and I'm not sure if I would have found this path if it wasn't for TryHackMe. So go on TryHackMe, do some of their modules, see how you go. You can always shoot me a message on Discord or leave a comment in the description below if you have any questions about that platform. I'm happy to guide anyone who wants to transition their career into IT to sort of just get started on that path. So have a look on TryHackMe. It's where I got started. That is the recommended path. The next question, for the OSCP exam, do you have to take screenshots for all the ports and all your enumeration steps? Now, it does certainly sound like you did go a bit overboard with the screenshots on your last exam attempt. For me, I would say look at the proving grounds walkthroughs that Offensive Security put out. I feel that is the kind of detail that they're looking for in your exam report. So don't go crazy overboard on the screenshots. For me, I assumed that the proving grounds walkthroughs were the sort of baseline that they were looking for, and that's what I did for my exam attempt. So what I did was take screenshots of the port that was actually vulnerable, take a screenshot of the vulnerable service banner or website page, and then the commands that I ran to get that exploit. You don't have to go through all your enumeration steps and all that. I think in the PWK forums, they actually have 2 or 3 walkthroughs on the machines where they go through crazy amount of detail to solve those machines, including all the enumeration steps and all the screenshots. That is definitely too verbose for the exam. So look at Proving Grounds for the best guide. The next question, what is given to you in the exam for the buffer overflow? For example, does it contain a file? Do you have to upload to Immunity Debugger and so on? How does it work exactly? I don't want to reveal too much about the exam itself, but I would say when you connect to the exam VPN, you are going to go to the exam portal, and in there you can pretty much find the instructions for all the machines that you're expected to hack into. One of them will be the buffer overflow. You're gonna be provided all the information you need in the description in there. So read through that very carefully, and it's not rocket science. It's pretty easy once you read the instructions. It kind of all makes sense. I kind of had that same worry about the setting up the buffer overflow before going into my first exam attempt, but once I got in there, read the instructions, it was easy to set up. You won't have any issues doing that. Just read the instructions really carefully. I've heard some people sort of skipping the instructions and just blindly going in there, and then they ended up wasting a ton of time. So spend that time initially to get all your information, set up all your scans, etc., and you should be good to go. Don't worry about it. It's super easy to set up. How would you rate the OSCP exam machines, hard or medium? I would rate the machines pretty easy, probably easy to medium. If you're comparing with Hack the Box, it's probably closer to easy machines than medium, somewhere between easy and medium for Hack the Box. For Proving Grounds, I would say it's slightly easier than the Proving Grounds machines. For example, you've got the 25 pointer on Proving Grounds. In the exam, the real 25 pointer will be slightly easier than that. And when you've got the 20 pointer in the Proving Grounds, the real 20 pointer is going to be slightly easier than that one. I would say when you're actually doing the exam, the machines feel much harder than they actually are because of the mental side of the exam and then the time pressure and all that. But I think in hindsight, once you have solved the exam machines, you look back and then realize that they were actually a lot easier than you were building it up to be. So think easier for the exam, but have a game plan for the mental side of the exam. That's what I would say for that question. The next question, I would love to see your note-taking process. Congrats. So for my note-taking process, I used Joplin and I divided the notes into two sections, one for initial shell and the other for privilege escalation. For initial shell, I separated all of them into the various ports that I have encountered in the past and grouped all the web exploits together into an HTTP section. For the privilege escalation, I grouped them together into Windows and Linux and then separated out the various sections, such as common things to look for in Limpy's output, various Windows exploits such as exploiting vulnerable services and so on. Now, I did make a video, probably about a 5 to 10 minute section on my note-taking process in my previous video, which was called the top 5 learning resources for the OSCP. So check that out. There is a timestamp in there for you to jump into the notes section if you want to see an outline of my notes. The next question is, which proving ground machines are the best for exam prep? I would say almost all the machines in PG is pretty good to prepare you for the OSCP exam. In my previous video, I mentioned you can stick to hard and below. I think up to hard machines is probably the hardest that you want to go for. Don't worry about the community rated very hard machines. They are definitely out of scope for the OSCP, and if you're smashing your head on those machines, you are probably going to overthink the exploits for the OSCP exam. Look at the TJ null list if you want a specific list you want to solve and work through. For me, I did all the machines up to community rated hard. I did a few machines rated very hard before I realized they were out of scope for the OSCP. But actually I went through all the very hard machines and then just clicked on them, booted them up, and then stole the walkthroughs off them and then plugged it into my notes for the exam. That's something that I just did in case an exploit in those machines came up in the OSCP exam, and I wanted to just kind of collect a lot of offensive security written walkthroughs because it seemed like it would be helpful to have them in my notes. So that's what I did. The next question is it possible to share your CV on how you built your CV with OSCP experience? That's definitely something I want to do for an upcoming video. I mentioned how I built out my CV. Essentially is I put on the prep that I did for the OSCP. I put on my various TryHackMe Hack the Box profiles. And I also mentioned the experience I had with doing Active Directory internal pen tests. So I'll definitely do a video on that soon, and I think it's going to be valuable for anyone who's trying to get their first job in InfoSec. The next question is, how much time a week should you spend on preparing for the exam, and is it possible to pass in 4 to 5 months? So it took me a long time to prepare for the OSCP exam, over a year for me, because I was doing it after work and I wasn't really smashing it as hard as some people have. So I didn't really kill myself during the prep. That approach worked best for me. And I would say I probably worked on machines for 1 to 3 hours a day. I took breaks, and sometimes I would have a couple of days or a few weeks even where I didn't even solve any boxes. So I kind of took it pretty easy, and that's why it took that long for me. In 4 to 5 months, I mean, if you can sort of dedicate a couple of hours every day, maybe 3 hours a day on the prep, you probably should be good to go. You'll have a good chance of passing after 3 or 5 months if you do your prep that way, I would say. But you'll be kind of killing yourself if you go that approach and really time box yourself to that process, and you'll have a higher likelihood of burning out. But obviously, I know that some people want to smash it out faster. So yeah, 1 year for me, you definitely don't need to prepare 1 year for the exam. I would say that your brain absorbs things and processes things a lot better if you do it in a long time frame. So for things to actually go into your long-term memory, you need that spaced repetition where you're exposing yourself to a concept over a period of time. So long prep has its advantages and you're not killing yourself during the prep. So it's a toss-up what you want to do. Yeah, definitely 4 to 5 months. If you put in the time, you can probably do it in 4 to 5 months. And the final question, sometimes I do look at write-ups on PG when I'm stuck. I just wanted to ask if that's okay. It's definitely okay to read write-ups and walkthroughs. You'll probably get different answers to this question if you ask different people, but for myself, I find it perfectly fine if you read walkthroughs as long as you're making notes and just keeping track of what it is that you're missing to make you go to that walkthrough. And over time, you'll sort of build up your intuition a bit more through that process. Don't kill yourself too hard and don't be too guilty when you're reading walkthroughs. I find you do learn stuff when you do read walkthroughs and that knowledge does build up. I think I only stopped reading walkthroughs in my final month leading up to my first exam attempt, where I went through the retired OSCP exam machines on the PWK lab material. That was pretty much the only month where I really focused on not reading walkthroughs. And before that, I was pretty much just looking at walkthroughs whenever I felt like it. So it's fine to read walkthroughs. That's kind of the approach that I took and it worked best for me. But yeah, people will have different answers to this question. So definitely play it by your experience as well. All right, and I think that wraps it all up. Just as a final note, the OSCP exam, don't kick yourself too hard if you do end up failing the exam. It's probably not the technical side that got you. If you've gone through the prep, your technical side should be fine. So just sort of get the other side handled, the mental factor, the time pressure. If you go for the exam more than once, you'll slowly start to see patterns and then you'll get your intuition down as well. All right, and that's it. So if you still have further questions of the OSCP exam, of course, as usual, feel free to leave it in the comment section down below. Thanks for tuning into this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye.